"Oh, that's very nice of you," Mr. Clumpman nodded, and actually took the two pots Kai offered to him. "I'll take this one," he decided, lifting up the second pot. "It's something I would have liked to have anyway. You see the print of the underside of the pot? It says Kramersdorf. Kramersdorf was its own small porcelain manufacturer in the lower parts of the Michtel Valley. It doesn't even exist anymore nowadays, since the lower parts of the Michtel Valley were turned into a dam. Yes, this piece is something special. If you really don't mind, I'll take it. And now excuse me, please. You're welcome to return any other time, but I'd really like to clean up this place a little. Have a good day, and thanks again." He handed the first pot back to Kai, raising the other high up like a trophy, and walked back into the desolate space of his store. I quite admired his good mood in the face of the heavy damages done to his property. Mr. Clumpman seemed to follow one of the sayings my father liked to preach. Whenever someone slaps you in the face, you give the other cheek. He gave the other cheek in the sense that he didn't stay mad at the person that ruined his store and stole his most precious pot, but instead showed gratefulness over the much less valuable pot Cat had given to him in replacement. Chapter 14, in which we continue looking for traces of the intruder. "Come on," said Kai, with a nod of his head, making it clear that he wanted to leave the scene as quickly as possible. The two of us, Louise and I, were clueless as to what had just happened. First of all, why would Kai give away a random coffee pot? We were about to burst with curiosity and couldn't wait to get out of earshot of the porcelain store. Kai, for some reason, carried the porcelain pot with the same delicacy as the postcard beforehand. We'd almost reached the parsonage when we couldn't stand the secrecy any longer. "Kai," I spluttered out, "what are you doing?" There was no need to ring the parsonage doorbell in order to get inside. Kai entered the house through the back door facing the old schoolyard and left it ajar. That way we didn't have to pester the genie nor Dad to get into the workshop. Neither did they have any reason to pester us with questions as to what we were doing, even though I would have really liked to know. Kai had carefully placed the postcard onto an old table, and now set down the postcard just as carefully. "All right," he said, sounding proud of his nebulous achievements. "I'm going to explain it all to you. Have you ever heard of insurance fraud?" Louisa shook her head, but I'd seen an episode of her TV show, and that episode had explained the concept of insurances. There were all sorts of different things that you could get an insurance for, and even more things that you could mess up, whether intentionally or not, when dealing with your insurances. "Yes," I answered. "Someone burned down his dilapidated barn to get the insurance to give him money to rebuild it. And it worked, or at least it did, until one of the neighbors snitched and told everyone that they saw the neighbor setting the fire himself." "Good," said Kai. Louisa nodding as a sign that she, too, had understood my explanation. "Let's just assume that we have something similar going on here." I became suspicious as soon as I learned that only a single pot was missing, and none of the remaining pots had been damaged. Maybe Mr. Clumpman created a bit of chaos himself to get his insurance to replace his window pane. You heard the policeman. It was super thin and already had a lot of cracks. Mr. Clumpman had seemed very friendly to me, and I didn't feel like he was the type of man to commit insurance fraud. Louisa, on the other hand, said, "It's a possibility. But why the pot in the postcard?" "Well, you see," Kai explained, his smugness increasing by the second. He looked like he just personally solved the case around the Queen of England's stolen crown jewels. Mr. Clumpman himself admitted that he barely set a foot into the store and hasn't even started cleaning the entire mess. And while I was looking at the postcards, I noticed a couple of fingerprints in the fine layer of ash covering them. I have a faint suspicion that these could be the intruder's fingerprints. In fact, I am quite certain that these are the intruder's fingerprints, since no one else seems to have touched anything in the store. "Oh, that's why you carried the card like a tablet," I smacked the flat of my palm against my forehead. "So that the ash wouldn't get smudged." "Exactly," said Kai. "But now we need to get Mr. Clumpman's fingerprints to compare them with those on the car. This is going to be difficult," called Louise. "I doubt he'll just come over to the passage and press his fingers onto an ink pad that we still haven't found." "Oh, don't worry, he won't have to," Kai grinned at us. "We already got his fingerprints. That's the whole reason I bought the 2 coffee pots." Janine gave me a very doubtful look, but then I explained to her that we wanted to give them to Mr. Clumpman as a consolation for his loss. She thought it was a good idea, so she let me go. I had noticed beforehand that Mr. Clumpman's fingers were just covered in ash because he'd already put away 2 of the pots from the floor. And I told him to take a look at both pots, ensuring that he extensively touched both of them, because obviously he had to take a look at them from all sides. That way he got a replacement coffee pot, another coffee pot with fingerprints, and we can compare them with the ones on a card. Now all we need is a good magnifying glass. I pointed at a big toolbox on a different table. "There's gotta be one in that box." He always kept the glass from his great-grandmother in there when he was still living with us. Kai rummaged a little and soon found a small grey cube with an extractable magnifying glass. He turned on the workshop lights and we crouched over the fingerprints. They were a little blurry, as sure wasn't on par with an actual link pad, but the postcard fingerprints clearly had their main swirlies much farther down on the fingertip than the coffee pot ones. "Okay," said Kai. "Mr. Clapman didn't break into his own store." "Thank God," I said. "Are we going to use the same method for Mr. Lusher?" "For whom?" asked Kai. This time he was the one utterly confused. "The drunkard that we carried into Azaba last night. Wait, no, not last night, this morning." Said Kai. "We could try, in theory at least. But there isn't really a point in trying the same coffee pot strategy we used to Mr. Clapman." "Why not?" asked Louise. "Doesn't he collect them as well?" "Sure does," I jumped to Kai's defense. "But he only seems to collect those with little motifs or paintings on them. And all we have is a plain white coffee pot. No, we'll have to think of something new." And so we just kind of stood about, not quite sure how to proceed, until Janine called us to dinner.